Yeah, this local government autonomy issue has been in the pipeline for so long, a lot of anticipation and expectations. But for business, we'll do that conversation at 1 p.m. during Business Incorporated. So that's another reason why you should tune to Business Incorporated at 1 p.m. later on today to see how business will treat it, the perspective from that aspect. Oh God, obviously is what you would get. But for now, let's do other business right here on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. I'm Ini John Mekwa. We normally would start from the global space, and that's where we're starting from, yes. So oil prices inched up on Friday amid signs of easing inflationary pressures in the United States. You know, the biggest oil consumer, and every data from that country affects sentiment, although Brent is set for a weekly decline. Let's look at the numbers this morning. Well, we've done better, bigger increase this week. But for today, 0.6% up at $85.89 a barrel, while WTI is 0.7% at $83.20. And the data from the United States inflation drove that. Both contracts gained in prior to sessions, but are still poised for that weekly declines. Brent futures are set for a fall of about 1% week on week, following 4 weekly gains, with WTI futures broadly stable on a weekly basis. Investors' confidence was boosted after data that showed yesterday that the United States inflation fell in June, stoking hopes that Federal Reserve will cut interest rates soon. The market, however, is still awaiting clearer signs of action, while the Fed Chair Jerome Powell acknowledges the recent improving trend in price pressures. Don't you just wish we were talking about that in Nigeria? Cutting interest rate. But anyway, Mr. Cardoso did mention that at a meeting yesterday. We'll bring that on later. Now let's look at the Naira and see that that flip or opposite relationship between NAFEX and NAFEM is what we had. It's not a very common one, but we had it yesterday. So yesterday we also had intervention from the central bank to the official markets. You would notice this is the second one this week, and we haven't had intervention into the BDCs, the parallel market, for a bit. I think it's about a month or so, if not much. But this is the first week in almost a month that we're having intervention from the central bank. Yesterday there was intervention, but the Naira still dropped. But a bit of good news, the close of the trade yesterday in the currencies market. The Naira closed at 1,554 Naira 65 kobo after it opened at 1,561 Naira 98 kobo, gained almost 0.5%, there, 0.47%. But on NAFEX, it was a drop. 2.34% right there to close at 1,570 Naira 52 kobo. But this, of course, is a major official market. And we do know that yesterday at the Senate, there was that conversation. CBN autonomy is still big for the lawmakers. I think at the end of the day, there was a no to that, introducing FX market and adjusting the existing FX Act 2004. Well, still in that line, Nigeria's Central Bank Governor, Mr. Laimi Cardoso, says that series of interest rate hikes carried out by the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee under his leadership will be short-lived, as the month-on-month inflation rate has already declined by 50% within 6 months. The CBN governor made this known during a chat session at this year's edition of Business Day CEO Forum, and he said the monetary actions were necessary to soak up excess liquidity and stabilize the Naira.
This is not something that I expect would remain with us forever, okay? Fiscal issues being moderated and the ability to soak up all the excess liquidity that we have in the system and be able to balance things out over a period of time, that's the important thing for the MPC as far as I can see. And I believe that, for example, I can tell you that between February and May of this year, the month-on-month rate of inflation, month-on-month, has halved. has gone down 50%. Okay? So my sense is that, as I said, this is not something that is a one-size-fits-all and you'll expect, to continue like this. To the extent that the right policies are used, and obviously with the results we've seen, the right policies are being used, I believe that in the not too distant future, things will begin to moderate and interest rates will come down.
Just look forward to that when interest rates will begin to taper and costs of funding will reduce in the country. That means inflation would have really gone down. We're looking forward to those days as promised by the CBN governor. Now we move to other issues. We're maximizing the over 1 billion market that's available in Africa. What's the motivation for creating the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA? However, with a seeming slow progress, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, has decided to push the women to the center of the workings through HerAfCFTA. Giving a face to the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, 6 years after it was founded, is the mission here. Conversations have been planned towards the theme, Breaking Barriers, Positioning Women to Harness Africa's Trade Opportunities.
A woman who is running a business, about 80% of her profit goes back into social activities. We can't say the same for the men, right? It is data that exists. When you invest in a woman's business, you are investing in social impact. HerAfCFTA comes to say the center, the heart and soul of this AfCFTA, the face of it, has to be the face of a woman.
So I serve on the IC board of a fund, Alethea Idea Fund.
A fireside chat with a four-member panel, one of them, the Chief Executive Officer of the Chair Center Group, Ms. Ibukwan Woshika, takes the conversation further with a focus on maximizing AfCFTA, mobilizing private sector finance for women-led enterprises.
If you go to even a country like UAE, it's an Arab world and you're thinking men are very much more patriarchal than here. But if you buy a property in Dubai and you say you buy it Mr. and Mrs., the title document comes as Mr. So, your husband, 50% categorically written, and Mrs. So, the wife, 50% categorically written.
Interesting.
Not Mr. and Mrs., because Mrs. can be any Mrs. But Mrs. first name, middle name, date of birth, and her shareholding is specific. So now that gives you a sense of ownership that in the effect that you do need to work with those kind of titles, you do have access.
The launch of HerAfCFTA in collaboration with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, along with other participants in the trade and investment space in Nigeria, begins in practice by creating a platform for women to exhibit their work.
Africa trades only 16.6% amongst itself. So trading is about jobs, it's about livelihoods, it's about revenue. And we feel very strongly that the role of women in the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is great and it's very important, it's an imperative.
While the focus here is women, organizers say the bigger picture is to increase intra-African trade to boost job opportunities and economic indices of countries on the continent. Interesting there, women getting attention yet again. HerAfCFTA, very interesting there. So now let's talk about something that may not be so interesting but crucial to the Nigerian people at this time. We've seen the resurfacing of fuel queues. It started in Abuja. The NNPCL came to say it's because of logistics, because of the weather. They were unable to transfer products from mothership to daughtership and all of that, even as we speak. In Abuja, the last that was reported, there's still queue queues at filling stations in Lagos. A lot of the independent filling stations seem not to have products because they are short. While for the NNPC filling stations, you see long queues there. So that takes our attention to what's going on with petrol prices. And we've heard that perhaps there's been an increase of depot charges, which is why that's also obstructing the movement of products. But let's look at it now. You have those numbers on the screen right there. Petrol price movement for April. We had petrol at 254 Naira 6 kobo. That was April 2023. By May, remember that big pronouncement was in May 29th, by President Bola Tinubu, subsidy is gone. We had 238 Naira 11 kobo. This is an average cost or price of PMS. As we know, in different parts of the country, there are different prices because of logistics, movement and transportation and all of that. By January, after that pronouncement was made in May 2023, by January, that's the beginning of this year, we had petrol had gone up to about 668 Naira 30 kobo. That indicated a 159.90% increase compared to the year before. And then by June, that's just last month, you would see that, of course, the price has gone even further. So that's June 2024 indicates the price of the loading price. That's what you have that. But the price, obviously, I'm sure you know the reality at this time of the price of petrol. In Lagos, it's about 568 for only NNPC filling stations. But outside there, you have as much as 1,000 Naira for a litre, So, and we're hearing, not confirmed because we haven't heard from any authority to tell us that landing costs or depot cost has increased. But let's look at some of those factors that drive or add up to the price of petrol. Obviously, the first is landing cost. And landing cost is obviously connected to the rate of Naira. We just looked at what Naira looks like. So for landing cost of petrol, which includes products, international price, and all of that, we have landing costs that moved of petrol went month on month by 37.4% to 632 Naira 17 kobo for a litre. That was in July 2023, from 460 Naira for a litre in June. Yeah, so we had landing costs. If we could have that slide, please, of the landing costs. So it went up by 37.4%. That was in July. Between June and July last year, it went from 460 Naira to 632 Naira 17 kobo. Please note that at this time, that pronouncement had been made, the unification of effects as well as stopping of subsidy. And then by July 2024, we saw landing costs had gone to 978 Naira from 720 Naira in October 2023. So obviously, these are the factors that lead to it. Other factors, apart from landing costs, is what you have there: landing costs, depot-related charges, insurance costs, transportation, logistics, NMDPRA levy, and a whole lot more adding to that. There's fendering costs, there's insurance, there's obviously transportation to the filling stations and all of that. All of that contributes to what makes up petrol price. Now, the thing is, when we compare, because obviously a changing point is that pronouncement by President Bola Tinubu on May 29, 2023, that subsidy is gone. So when we compare the costs and the gains, Yeah, so take your mind back. How much were you buying petrol before that pronouncement? How much is it now? And subsidy is supposed to be gone. What's the true situation? What are the gains and the costs? Let's find out from someone who has these data, and hopefully he will share with us and try to tell us some of the gains and the costs of that statement by President Bola Tinubu. We have Jide Pratt. He's the country pilot manager with Trade Grid, joins us virtually. Mr. Pratt, thank you so much for your time. Good morning. I know you would do better than I did when it comes to the data. Some of those are just investigation by journalists and report following MBS and all of that. Help us to understand the issue of landing costs, the issue of other factors, insurance and NMDPA levies and all of that, that feed into the cost of a litre of petrol at this time.
Thank you for talking to me, and good morning. I don't think you've done badly, to be frank. You've put everything in the right bucket. Now let's start from the beginning. Every time we buy petrol at the retail outlet, that is what is called an ex-pump price. So that's the pump price. And you've talked about how it has moved over the period of time. However, to get to that pump price, what it means is that we're going to go on a platform for trading petroleum products. And I try to liken this to the stock exchange. You want to buy a share, you know, by looking at what the deals of the day are, what the stocks that went up or down, it guides you. So if we look at petrol, then you'll be looking at something either called the Eurobond or RBOB for gasoline. It's just a quote. But that guides you on how much $1 per ton is and where it's coming from. So that's the starting point. You've aptly talked about things like NMDPRA fees, lightering, and to lighter just means I'm moving product from one big vessel to a smaller vessel. The immediate question will be, why do that? It will be based on the fact that if I'm going to berth or park it at a jetty, I need to be able to make sure that that ship does not go aground. But you're going to pay for those services. You're going to pay for finance. You're going to pay for insurance. You're going to pay for things like what you call Q&Q, which is quality and quantity. You want to ascertain that if I'm buying 30 units of something, it is 30 units I receive. There are things like Incoterms, which are just guiding principles for where does liability move. For us in Nigeria, once you add all those things together, don't forget, most of them are in the US dollar per ton or cents per liter. There's an exchange rate factor that goes into that as well. So when you convert that, because we buy in the local Naira, you get what is called a landed cost in the depot. Once you have a landed cost in the depot, then it means that a vehicle, a truck, must move that product from that depot to the retail stations where they receive it in their underground tanks. And that is how the costing, maintenance of the station, everything is added into those to get a price that gives a margin to the people who sell at the retail outlets. So that's where we are. I don't know if you want me to go on from there to how we got into subsidy and no subsidy, or does
I would like for you to go the way of looking at those factors, the changes we've had since May 2023. From your calculation, I know you're privy to some of those costs, the landing costs and all of those insurance. Are we still paying subsidy? Is the government still paying subsidy? If yes, at what point does this subsidy come in? Because, I mean, we have those factors, insurance and landing costs and you know, the NMDPR. At what point do they come in?
Okay, so my straight answer, and I'm sorry, I tend to disagree when people say subsidy is gone. The president made a statement on the 29th of May, 2023. And let's be clear, if you look at the numbers of what Eurobond and all those things were, we were landing petroleum products at a certain level where the subsidy element, based on my calculation, was about 54 Naira circa per litre. Now, what has happened from then till now is that the exchange rates have gone up. If the exchange rates have gone up, then it means that the pricing of buying as well has gone up. So every time we land a product, if we land a product in Lagos, Nigeria, and take it to a station, and I'm going to use just figures. If we land it at 200 naira per litre, where does the subsidy come in? If the federal government says that that product must only be sold at 150 naira per litre, there's a gap of 50 naira. Are we okay up to that point?
Yes, we are.
If we are, then that gap of 50 naira means that someone is going to bear that gap of 50 naira, because the government believes that 200 naira is too much for the populace to pay. So it means that they have subsidized that cost of a litre of petrol by X amount. So as time goes on, every time they land a cargo, it means that whatever that landed price is, if we're not selling at that fair value price or at that true reflection price, something is being held back and is paid back to whoever brings it in. In this case, NNPC, who has been doing this for about 7 to 8 years. I think that clarifies where subsidy comes in from.
So
it also means that.
So as it is,
it also means that if you moved to 250 and you keep on selling at 100 naira or 150, that differential margin just begins to go either up or down.
Okay, so as it is now, it seems clear that there's a subsidy element still here in that value chain. But now we're hearing of issues of increase in depot charges. Does that mean that we should expect, because already we've seen increase in some filling stations of the prices? Abuja, I mean, that's like a constant. I'm just talking from Lagos, where you have the cheapest. Should we expect that there'll be an increase in subsidy or increase at the pump price?
So, very, very interesting question. And what are these charges that we're talking about? If you look at the cost of landing a product in tank and my cost of finance, and let's go as basic as cost of funding. If I'm funding at 2% or 3% and I move up to 6 or 7%, what it means is that my cost of doing business is higher. So if it took me 10 days to get into that place, for instance, and it's taking me 12 days, it could be that the cost of handling, and I'll call them operations costs, have gone up. You've rightly put part of it in the depot. Bottom line is this, Ini. If I was paying 7 naira per litre for something and the price has gone up to 9 naira per litre, what it means is that there's a 2 naira increase in that cost of buying. Now, be it at the depot, be it at wherever it may be, it means that I need to increase that price to the customer. So it's two things. If we run a subsidy regime, which in my opinion we do, then it means that the cost of subsidizing that product to keep it at the price we want people to pay for is higher by 2 naira. So yes, that price at that depot, quote and unquote, will go up by 2 naira. However, if the government says I'm going to absorb that 2 naira, then it means that the cost of subsidizing 1 litre of fuel has gone up by that 2 naira. So the government will pay more in terms of subsidy. It's just what it is. It's either the people will pay that differential if the government doesn't subsidize it, or yes, your first point, the price will go up by that amount. It's really as simple as that.
Yeah, and since we're not talking to a government official, we cannot say for sure where that responsibility would tilt to. But I mean, we started this conversation to ask this. Would you say that the president's pronouncement, because if you talk to an average Nigerian, they said, oh, the president shouldn't have made that pronouncement. That was the turning point for Nigeria, even though we have applause coming from IMF, World Bank, and some economists to say it was time to end the subsidy regime. But I mean, looking at where that has brought us, and the possibility that the government is still paying subsidy, would you say that we have benefits or gains from that major pronouncement, and of course, the unification of the FX policy?
My quick answer to that is no, in terms of gains. So the pronouncement of the president is based on his wisdom and understanding of how he wants to run the nation. When the president said subsidy was gone, and let's put it in perspective, if you did some calculations then, we probably were paying a subsidy about 50 or 54 naira per litre. That's not the same today. Today, we're probably paying about 200 naira or more per litre. And I mean, those are my personal opinions based on what I see. So what are the gains that we've gotten? And in all fairness to the president and his team, they seem to be getting the CNG initiative right. So this is the question. if they had been a bit more transparent, then what it meant is that from May 29th, 2003, there should have been someone on the government side saying that this is how much we have saved month on month, and this is where it's going to. That way, we'll begin to say that, look, the pains that we're going through now are not, they're not long-term. So it means that how many CNG buses have been put on state between May 29, 2023 and now? How many, renewable units are being built into people's houses in terms of cost of power? So that's on the one hand. So the question is that if that was a gain, then maybe we're not seeing the gain as fast as we should. I think NNPC just launched about 12 CNG stations. While that is good to know, it's not enough. So it means that the option of driving with petrol, which we're all paying about 600 naira circa for, if we were getting a CNG, more like in terms of we were using natural gas, we were using CNG to propel our cars, and are paying at about 250, 300, quote and unquote, per kilogram, if we move that into liters, then it means the saving on that already is 50% into our pockets. We spend less by 50%. So if we have gained anything from subsidy, it's a hope that this CNG initiative drives on well. That's number one. The second part is this: the transparency in NNPC for me is totally bedazzling. There's just none. We have countries like Ghana who on and off they go around about subsidy, but the guiding template to how much a litre lands is on the NPA website. If you went to the NMDPA website now, with all due respect to them, you don't see data that can drive decision making. And that's by choice, in my opinion. So while the gains of subsidy will be seen hopefully soon in terms of the CNG initiative, I'm still struggling with someone from the presidency that has come to say these are the other things that we have done based on how much we saved. Because don't forget, when the subsidy was gone, two things happened. The subsidy payments, ideally at that level, were lower. But there was also an immediate gain because prices shifted from about 220 naira to about 500 and something. So the question is this: where has that money gone to? What has it done for us to be able to say that, yes, while we've suffered this, these are the gains? Has healthcare improved? Road networks? I really don't know, and I guess the government is in the best place to answer those questions.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, Mr. Pratt, that we've seen it in the FAC. It moved from subsidy to FAC, and so, of course, as you asked, it will be state governments especially, and even the federal government. And now, thank God, the local government have the autonomy to see what they are doing with it or what they have done with it so far. But I mean, it's our job right here as the media to keep the conversation going and shine the light. Thank you, Mr. Jide Pratt. I don't think this was a very easy conversation for you, but thank you.
It's what it is. It's what it is. It's what it is.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, well, we need more data out there. We need more information out there. That's obvious. Some of these conversations are not so easy, but we have to stay on it. Have we really made any gain, since that's a applaudable pronouncement? Two of them, the one on FX and the one on subsidy removal. Well, let's, before we head back to Sunrise Daily Studio, let's just take you a little bit of recap of what the market looked like yesterday. It was a very, very red. Well, not very, very red, but just one very red day. Yesterday, 0.33%, and the market lost 188 billion naira from the market cap, at losing more of the 99,000. If we continue this trend, we might just go back to 98. Another picture I want to see, activity chart was red yesterday. I mean, volume was down more than 68%. Look at it right there. 68%, 53 for value, and 12. And sectors, you had consumer good looking good, but surplus did the market, or investors in surplus did the market not so good yesterday. Top trade had Fidelity, Linkashore, and Access Co. I will give you more and fresh numbers at 1 p.m. I'll be here with Anyeti Edet to do that. Go around the world of business in 55 minutes with you. Do join me there. Let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio.